In 1959's, an entire hunting party deep within the Congo Basin vanished from history right after feasting on a creature that officially does not exist. They had managed to trap something colossal in the murky waters, a breathing anomaly with the body of a titan and the neck of a serpent. But within days of their unprecedented victory, a mysterious, sweeping affliction claimed the life of every single individual who partook. The massive remains were left to dissolve into the primordial swamp, permanently erasing the only physical proof of a biological impossibility. For over a century, heavily funded expeditions have plunged into the uncharted darkness to find what those hunters left behind. What haunts the lightless depths of Lake Tele is far more terrifying than a simple prehistoric relic. Imagine a place where time itself seems to hold its breath. A vast emerald labyrinth covering over 66,000 square miles, stretching endlessly beneath an impenetrable canopy of ancient green. This is the Congo River Basin, a world virtually untouched by modern cartographers, where winding waterways conceal secrets that belong to the dawn of our planet. To journey here is to step back into a primordial era, a landscape of breathtaking beauty, profound isolation, and whispered legends. The air is thick with humidity, and the calls of exotic wildlife echoing through a forest that has stood defiant against the march of modern civilization. Deep within this uncharted paradise, far beyond the reach of cellular signals and satellite roads, lies an enigma that has captivated the imaginations of explorers, scientists, and dreamers for well over a century. It is a mystery that dwells in the dark, silent waters of Lake Tele and the surrounding Likwala swamps. A magnificent anomaly, an entity said to dwarf the greatest land mammals of our modern age. They call it the one who stops the flow of rivers. Today, we journey into the heart of the unknown. We are searching for the ultimate legend of the wild, a creature that challenges our very understanding of natural history. We are searching for the Mokele-Mbembe. To truly comprehend the phenomenon of the Mokele-Mbembe, we must first look to the indigenous communities who have called the Congo River Basin their home for countless generations. The people of this region possess an intricate, deeply respectful understanding of their environment, a place where the rivers are the ultimate source of survival, providing sustenance, navigation, and life itself. The name Mokele-Mbembe originates from Lingala, a widely spoken Central Bantu language belonging to the vast Niger-Congo linguistic phylum. When translated, the name carries a heavy, almost mythological weight. It means, quite literally, one who stops the flow of rivers. For the local tribes, such as the Biaka and the Baka, the Mokele-Mbembe was historically not viewed strictly as a biological, flesh and bound animal awaiting zoological classification. Instead, it was often conceptualized as a powerful, metaphysical force. It was a vital spirit of the waterways, an entity that governed the unpredictable, life-giving, and sometimes perilous nature of the river currents. In a deeply interwoven ecological system where the arbitrary withholding or violent release of a river's waters could dictate the fate of an entire village, the concept of a river shutter represented a crucial cosmological archetype. Furthermore, localized mythologies occasionally positioned the entity as a fierce guardian of hidden portals to other realms, strictly monitoring human intrusion into sacred or inherently dangerous natural zones. The entity is also known by an extensive array of regional synonyms across the African continent, highlighting a widespread cultural archetype. In the regions surrounding Lake Bangweulu in Zambia, it was historically referred to as the Nsanga. In the Ubangi-Shari region, it was associated with massive snake mythologies under names such as Badigi, Nakula-Angu, Diba, and Sango. Yet, as foreign explorers began to penetrate the continent, this rich, underlying African folklore was systematically discarded. The nuanced indigenous mythology was relegated to a mere etymological footnote, reconstructed instead as a blank canvas upon which Western visitors could freely project their own profound desires and prehistoric fantasies. The radical transformation of the Mokele-Mbembe from an indigenous water spirit into an extant, biological dinosaur cannot be analyzed in isolation from the cultural zeitgeist of the early 20th century. During this era, unprecedented fossil discoveries in North America culminated in highly publicized, sensational museum exhibitions across the Western world. The unveiling of massive prehistoric skeletons sparked a global cultural phenomenon that historians now refer to as Dinomania. The public was absolutely obsessed with the concept of giant, ancient reptiles. Capitalizing aggressively on this immense public fascination, a prominent German big game hunter, eccentric animal dealer, and zoo supplier named Carl Hagenbeck published an autobiographical book in 1909 titled Beasts and Men. In this text, Hagenbeck explicitly proposed the existence of a living dinosaur in Africa. Interestingly, Hagenbeck initially located this creature not in the Congo, but significantly further south in Rhodesia, which is modern-day Zimbabwe. Relying entirely on unverified rumors provided by his associate Hans Schoenberg, who claimed an unknown beast was overcoming hippopotamuses in Lake Bangweulu, Hagenbeck described a colossal creature that was half elephant and half dragon, noting emphatically that it was seemingly akin to the Brontosaurus. Hagenbeck's spectacular claims were met with immediate and harsh skepticism by the scientific authorities of his time. Curators at the Rhodesia Museum openly dismissed the narrative as a terrestrial equivalent of the Great Sea Serpent myth, a fabrication designed merely to sell books and attract wealthy investors. Critics rigorously catalogued the conflicting, highly chimerical descriptions of the region's mystery beasts, which included reports of animals possessing rhinoceros horns, crocodile heads, python necks, hippopotamus bodies, and flippers. Yet, despite the contradictory nature of these early reports, Hagenbeck's specific insertion of the sauropod aesthetic into the African landscape irrevocably shaped the future trajectory of the legend. From that moment on, the Western world was primed to find a living, breathing relic of the Jurassic Age hidden in the deep jungle. A geographical shift of the legend from the open savannas of the south to the deep, impenetrable rainforests of the Congo River Basin was formalized by a series of successive European accounts. The earliest recorded Western reference to an anomalous giant creature in the region predates the dinosaur craze by over a century. In 1776, the French Catholic missionary Abbé Lévin Bonaventure Proyart, who was painstakingly documenting the natural history of the Congo Basin, reported observing enormous, unidentifiable tracks while traversing the deep forest. Proyart noted in his historical logs that the tracks were composed of massive claw marks that formed a contiguous print approximately 3 feet in circumference, attributing them to an unseen but monstrous animal. However, the definitive modern parameters of the Mokele-Mbembe myth were established in the year 1913 by the German explorer and military officer Ludwig Freiherr von Stein-Lausnitz. While leading a highly organized government-funded expedition to survey the colonial holdings in what is now Cameroon and the Congo, von Stein collected detailed, consistent indigenous accounts of a terrifying creature inhabiting the Lakwala swamps. Von Stein's extensive report formally affixed the name Mokele-Mbembe to the entity and provided a comprehensive physical and behavior profile. The creature was described by informants as possessing smooth, brownish, gray skin that allowed it to camouflage flawlessly into its murky surroundings, matching the overall body mass of an elephant. Morphologically, it featured a remarkably long, highly flexible neck and a muscular, elongated tail heavily reminiscent of an alligator. Uniquely and highly problematically for future dinosaur advocates, von Stein recorded that the creature possessed a single, very long tooth, adding the specific caveat that some locals insisted it was actually a horn. This specific morphological detail, the presence of a horn, blatantly violates the known anatomy of sauropod dinosaurs, which possess peg-like teeth for stripping vegetation and no cranial ornamentation. Behaviorally, von Stein's informants described the Mokele-Mbembe as an exceptionally territorial and highly aggressive vegetarian. It supposedly resided in deep underwater caves, carved by the river S current at sharp bends, and regularly left the water to feed primarily on a specific type of leafy vine, known locally as the Malambo plant. Despite its strictly herbivorous diet, the creature was reported to attack native canoes with extreme prejudice. overturning the vessels and violently striking down the human occupants, but notably leaving their fallen forms undisturbed in the water. As the decades progressed, the narrative of the Mokele-Mbembe transitioned from fleeting sightings and anomalous tracks to a tale of alleged physical interaction. This era culminated in an event that remains the most dramatic, haunting, and heavily debated pillar of the modern mythology. In the year 1959, the legend reached a terrifying crescendo near the remote shores of Lake Tele. According to harrowing accounts carefully preserved by missionaries in the region, the local Bangombe tribe found their peaceful existence severely threatened. A colossal Mokele-Mbembe had begun to aggressively traverse the lake and its adjacent tributaries daily, disrupting the tribe's vital fishing activities and posing a severe peril to their community. Driven by the primal need to protect their families and secure their sustenance, the brave Bangombe hunters devised a desperate, monumental plan. Across a narrow channel of the waterway, they painstakingly constructed a massive, sharpened wooden barrier, a heavy structure known as a fishing weir. They concealed themselves in the dense swamp thickets, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the ancient jungle, waiting for the giant to approach. When the immense creature inevitably attempted to breach the wooden blockade, the hunters sprang from the shadows. A colossal struggle ensued, a frantic battle of endurance pitting man against a seemingly unstoppable force of nature. Through sheer determination and overwhelming numbers, the hunters finally overcame the behemoth, vanquishing the giant and bringing its fearsome reign to a permanent close. In the triumphant aftermath of the great struggle, the villagers gathered to celebrate their unprecedented victory. They butchered the massive animal and enthusiastically partook in a grand feast, consuming the earthly remains of the vanquished creature. But their triumph was entirely fleeting, replaced swiftly by an unimaginable horror. Within days, a dark and mysterious sickness descended upon the village. A severe, toxic affliction swept relentlessly through the community. Every single individual who had partaken in that fateful feast perished, their life essence fading away into the unforgiving wilderness. The entire hunting party was claimed by the tragedy. The remains of the creature, abandoned in the ensuing panic, were quickly reclaimed by the rapid decomposition cycles of the dense swamp, leaving behind no physical evidence, only a chilling, devastating cautionary tale about the perils of challenging the spirits of the river. The transition from colonial-era anecdotes to highly structured, heavily funded cryptozoological expeditions occurred primarily in the late 1970s and 1980s. Driven by rapid advancements in global transportation and a resurgent public interest in living fossils, a wave of Western researchers descended upon the Lakwala swamp, determined to uncover the truth. The modern search was catalyzed by Dr. Roy P. McCall, a trained biochemist at the University of Chicago, and James H. Powell, a herpetologist. Undertaking major expeditions in 1980 and 1981, McCall systematically redefined the creature to fit a strict, uncompromising sauropod morphology, aided by Pastor Eugene Thomas, an American missionary who had ministered in the region since 1955 and acted as a vital interpreter. McCall interviewed dozens of indigenous residents. McCall described the creature as a gargantuan animal 15 to 30 feet in length, primarily consisting of a snake-like neck tapering to a small head, possessing short, stout legs with 3 clawed feet, and occasionally featuring a rooster-like frill running along the back of its neck. However, McCall expeditions were not the only ones chasing the legend. In 1981, an American aerospace engineer named Herman Registers led a competing expedition deep into Lake Tele. Registers sensationally claimed to have captured a loud, ear-splitting, roaring sound, echoing through the dense swamp thickets. A vocalization his local guides immediately attributed to the Mokele-Mbembe moving away through the brush. The search gained a profound veneer of academic credibility in 1983 when Marcela Agnagna, a trained Congolese zoologist from the Brazzaville Zoo, claimed to have achieved a definitive, sustained visual encounter. Agnagna reported observing a colossal creature with a small lizard-like head, long neck, and broad back wading in the shallow waters of Lake Tele for several minutes. Despite possessing a Super 8 Minolta Cine camera, Agnagna completely failed to capture the entity on film. The failure was highly controversial. While initial reports falsely claimed he had left the lens cap on, Agnagna later clarified the heartbreaking reality. In the overwhelming excitement of the moment, his camera had accidentally been left on the macro setting from a previous attempt to film close-up shots of monkeys. This agonizing mechanical error resulted in completely blurred footage, depriving the scientific world of potentially definitive evidence. The quest continued into the 1990s, heavily financed by Japanese media conglomerates. A Japanese film crew in 1992 managed to capture aerial video footage of an anomalous, massive shape traversing the waters of Lake Tele. However, rigorous, independent analysis of the grainy, highly indistinct video suggested a far more ordinary explanation. Analysts concluded that it almost certainly depicted a standard African dugout canoe containing two men, with one individual standing upright at the bow, a highly common navigational stance that visually mimics the profile of a long neck and head when viewed from a great distance. As the Mokele-Mbembe legend gained traction throughout the late 20th century, it predictably spawned a wave of intense cultural and ideological fascination. The fundamental ideological motivations driving the search shifted dramatically for some, from innocent zoological curiosity to aggressive theological missions. The Mokele-Mbembe became a pivotal, strategic asset for young Earth creationists, individuals who adhere strictly to a literal interpretation of the biblical book of Genesis. For creationist researchers like Bill Gibbons, who led multiple heavily funded Christian expeditions into the region, the discovery of a living dinosaur would represent a paradigm-shattering event. It would ostensibly invalidate the established geological timescale and deal a paradoxical blow to the foundational tenets of modern evolutionary theory. Despite expending vast resources, these expeditions entirely failed to procure any empirical evidence. Simultaneously, the myth was catapulted directly into mainstream Western consciousness through the power of Hollywood. In 1985, the world was captivated by the major motion picture Babe, Secret of the Lost Legend, a film that centered heavily on the discovery of a family of Mokele-Mbembes, explicitly depicted as animatronic brontosaurs, in the African jungle. The film effectively solidified the exact sauropod aesthetic in the global public imagination long before the advent of digital effects. Decades later, the legend was utilized once again in the 2012 found footage adventure film The Dinosaur Project, detailing a fictional expedition to the Congo that inadvertently uncovers a hidden ecosystem of surviving Mesozoic reptiles. The innate human desire for mystery, the deeply romantic notion that an uncharted world still exists somewhere on a fully mapped Earth, ensured the legend survival far beyond the realm of scientific plausibility. Despite the romantic allure of a surviving dinosaur, the mainstream scientific consensus, encompassing evolutionary biology, paleontology, and climatology, unequivocally and firmly rejects the hypothesis that a breeding population of sauropod dinosaurs exists within the Congo Basin. The rejection is grounded not in an arrogant dismissal of indigenous folklore, but in hard, verifiable data regarding the physical constraints of the natural world. The primary argument dismantling the living fossil hypothesis relies on the rigorous paleoclimatological history of the African continent. Proponents frequently characterize the Congo rainforest as a primordial sanctuary that has remained environmentally static since the age of reptiles. This characterization is demonstrably false. Climatological data reveals that the Congo Basin has undergone massive, repeated, and extreme environmental fluctuations. As recently as 30,000 years ago, during the late Pleistocene epoch, massive global aridification processes converted the vast majority of the Congo Basin from a dense tropical rainforest into a harsh, open, arid savanna, an ecosystem entirely devoid of the deep swamps and massive aquatic vegetation necessary to physically sustain a colossal herbivore would have immediately driven any extant sauropod populations to absolute extinction. Furthermore, a herd of multi-ton creatures would leave undeniable physical evidence, massive trackways, large skeletal remains, and environmental disruption. Yet, The jungle remains devoid of such proof. If the Mokele-Mbembe is definitively not a living dinosaur, the stubborn persistence of the visual sightings requires a rational, alternative zoological explanation. Mainstream scientific experts universally suggest that the sightings are the direct result of morphological misidentifications of known African fauna, heavily influenced by generational cultural transmission. The most widely accepted and logically sound explanation is that the Mokele-Mbembe represents a degraded folk memory of the black rhinoceros. In 2001, a highly respected BBC documentary series titled Congo conducted extensive interviews with the Biaka pygmies regarding their local wildlife. When researchers presented the indigenous informants with a comprehensive illustrated wildlife manual, they explicitly and confidently identified a photograph of a rhinoceros as the Mokele-Mbembe. The behavioral profile of the rhinoceros, a highly aggressive, intensely territorial herbivore, fully capable of overturning small riverboats, combined with a single prominent horn, perfectly aligns with the earliest uncorrupted descriptions provided by von Stein in 1913. Over centuries, as the rhinoceros was driven from the deep swamps, the cultural memory of the aggressive beast morphed steadily into a legendary aquatic monster. Secondary rationalizations account for the specific sightings where a long neck is the primary visual feature. A highly plausible explanation draws direct parallels to other global lake monsters. The swimming elephant hypothesis. When a large African forest elephant wades into deep water to cross a river or lake, its massive body submerges entirely to support its weight, leaving only the very top of its head and its highly extended, muscular trunk above the surface to function as a snorkel. To a human observer, positioned at a distance or viewing the swimming animal through the dense fog of the Congo dawn, the sinuous, muscular trunk curving out of the water flawlessly mimics the profile of a long-necked dinosaur. Additionally, some herpetological researchers suggest that sightings of a small reptilian head emerging from the water are extreme misidentifications of exceptionally large soft-shelled turtles belonging to the family Trionychidae. The African soft-shelled turtle can reach lengths of up to 1 meter, an exceptionally massive, anomalous specimen displaying its elongated, fleshy tubular snout and thick neck above the water. Surface could easily be perceived by a startled observer in low light as the head of a much larger creature. The Mokele-Mbembe is a profound, incredibly complex phenomenon. It exists at the volatile intersection of indigenous African cosmology, the historical momentum of colonial exploration, and the modern ideological conflicts of the Western world. While the exhaustive compilation of biological and climatological data indicates absolutely that there is no physical reality to the claim of a living sauropod, the creature itself refuses to fade away. Ultimately, the phenomenon must be understood as a remarkably resilient cultural artifact. For the indigenous populations, it originated as a highly sophisticated framework for understanding the formidable power of deep river ecosystems. For the early explorers, it was an exotic prize to validate their global dominion, and for us today, it serves as a lasting testament to the enduring power of human myth-making. The Mokele-Mbembe may not exist as a remnant of the Cretaceous period, but it thrives brilliantly as a symbol of our unyielding, deeply romantic desire to find magic and wonder in the remaining shadows of our natural world. As long as there are unexplored waters and uncharted forests, the spirit of the river Shudder will continue to glide silently through our collective imagination.